Have you ever been in a situationship? So it's hot and cold. Maybe you think it's going somewhere. You guys have a really good date. Then you don't hear from the person for 3 days. And then suddenly you're like, okay, they're clearly not interested. And then they do something really romantic. And you're going through this mixed feelings. You don't know where the relationship lies. Well, research shows that the emotional ambiguity of that situationship is worse than a clear-cut rejection. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I felt relief when a situationship has ended, because you're like, oh, okay, I know that nothing's happening. Like, I would rather know that nothing's happening. And this is called the Ellsberg paradox, which is that basically we as humans prefer known risks than uncertainty. And today, in this episode, I want to talk about how a clear rejection is better, kinder, than a fake promise. You are listening to My Rejection Story, hosted by Alice Draper. So I'm at the 1 Billion Followers Summit in a Poddster booth, and you should check out Poddster if you're ever in the UAE. And some sort of stories come to mind. I'm going to put my friend Katerina on the spot quickly because she met a PR company that was not really a fit for her to work with. And they were kind of like sending her all these messages like, you know, will you work with us? Will you work with us? We've got a free gift for you. We've got all these things. And I've been there where it's really scary to say no because you're going to disappoint someone, or you feel like they've invested time in you, or they were like nice, or whatever the reasons were. And so we want to kind of get out of it nicely. I've experienced this back when I was dating, where if I didn't like a date, I didn't really want to like overtly reject them. I just hoped that we could like fade things out. And over time, I realized that the kindest thing is to just reject someone because they're not left with that uncertainty and those feelings of like, you know, not really knowing what's next. One of my clients, Kelli Thompson, often says something called clarity is kindness. But clarity is difficult. And I think that part of like building a rejection resilience muscle is having the resilience to say clearly what you want and what you don't want. And saying what you don't want is not always easy because it's hurting someone. You know, it's not nice to like see the disappointment on someone's face. In business, I often get ghosted by leads. So like I'll have a sales call. I thought it went well. I never hear from them again. And as an entrepreneur who's been doing this for 6 years now, when someone emails me and they say, I'm sorry, it's not a fit, like my budget is in a different place, or I have different priorities, or whatever it is, I'm like, thank you. Like, that's really helpful. Like, I will not contact you again unless you reach out to me, unless circumstances change. But like, that saves so much time. I don't want to be like following up on you because I think that you might be a good lead when you were never interested in the first place, but you also struggled to communicate that to me. So I want to talk briefly about how you can build a bit of this muscle. It doesn't come easy. I would say the first one is to start small. It's really hard to like go break someone's hearts, you know, we see it in relationships all the time. So it's really hard to like go and tell someone that you don't want to be with them and give them the exact reasons, which I think is a very kind thing to do to someone rather than letting them always wonder why the relationship ended. But you can do little things like when you get a sales call from an insurance company, you can genuinely say like, I'm sorry, like I don't want this. You know, I'm not in a position right now for insurance, or I don't have it, whatever it is. So I think like salespeople are a good practice of building that muscle because the stakes are not as high. They're not people in your life. You're not going to like always have to see that person again. And And then you could also try with people who you feel safer with. Could be coworkers who are, just generally, that they're not super sensitive. I think sensitive people are especially difficult. And I really speak from experience. Like, I am come from being the most conflict avoidant person in the world. That's why I started this podcast. And I learned that conflict avoidance is really unkind to those around me. So yeah, start with people that feel safe, very assertive people. And, for example, someone I know is extremely assertive and he speaks his mind. So it's very easy for me to speak my mind because I know that that's respected. But then, just look for those opportunities to do it, because the more you do it, the easier it gets over time. Other things that I would say are to start just reframing it in your mind. So when you are in that situation where you need to say no, you need to say no because it was a bad date, or you need to say no because someone's selling you something you don't want. You need to say no because someone wants to ask you for coffee to pick your brain, and you really just don't have those 15 minutes in your calendar to go get your brain picked or whatever it is. Normalize it as self-respect, but also respect for the other person. So, say to yourself, and I do think the kind of a cognitive behavioral therapy of this works, but say to yourself, I respect myself, and that's why I'm not going to do something that I don't want to do. And I respect the other person. And when you respect the other person, you respect them enough to not put them in a situation where you don't want to, it's not mutual. I would never want to go for coffee with someone who doesn't want to be there. That would make me feel really shit. I don't want to be knowing that they're resenting every minute that they're having coffee with me, but they just said yes to me because they're a people pleaser. So I think that just every time you kind of have that resistance, normalize it as self-respect. And then other things that I would say are to set those emotional boundaries with yourself. So it's hard to know what you do, don't want to do, especially if you're used to saying yes all the time, which is a leading cause of burnout, I believe. And I've seen, many of the people, and Gabor Maté and Daniel Maté have done research on this in When the Body Says No, which is that saying yes makes us sick if we don't want to be saying yes. So I think that self-awareness piece is key, where you need to know, what are your emotional limits? What are your emotional boundaries? What are you prepared to say yes to, and what are you not prepared to say yes to? And sometimes it's as simple as listening to your body. And it's easy not to do that, especially if we're not in the habits of doing it. But take a minute before you answer. Listen, what do you feel? Do you feel intrigued, excited, positive emotions? That's a sign that something you probably want to do is going to be an energy surger. Do you feel dread? That maybe is not an energy surger. Maybe that's the opposite. And sometimes you feel nervous, but good nervous. This is beyond my comfort zone, but it's a direction I want to be, which I feel like being here at the 1 billion followers summit and asking people, if they will talk to me or do an interview with me. That's the good nervous. I know I want to do this because it's part of the mission. So yeah, checking in with yourself, and making the time to check in with yourself. And then I think right back to the very beginning, which is it's a muscle. It's going to feel uncomfortable. Got to do it anyway. Over time, it becomes easier. And I, as someone, and I'm going to share one quick story before we wrap up this episode. When I was in university, I lived with 2 housemates, and for 2 years, and I was deeply, deeply conflict avoidant. I did not do communicating anything. So if no one was washing the dishes, I didn't know how to say, hey guys, this is not okay. I feel like I'm the only one doing the dishes in the house, or I feel like I'm the one buying all the toilet paper. Really trivial things, but they add up when you live together. And I ended up in a situation where they were in conflict with each other, and I was kind of in the middle, and they both expected me to kind of advocate for them. But I'd never set any boundaries for myself throughout. And I'd never, there just wasn't that precedent. So they didn't expect it of me, and it's not their fault. That was on me. I had to set those boundaries. I had to communicate. And, those friendships kind of eroded because I grew like not so great emotions. And when I look at it now, I'm like, it's just really unfair on people around you to not set those boundaries, to not communicate, to not know yourself well enough to know what you can and cannot tolerate. So it's not just about you and your own self-preservation, but it's also like, if it's not fair on people around you, people who genuinely care about you, to just say yes to everything. It is a muscle. I hope this has been a valuable episode. It's a very short and sweet one, but I appreciate you being here. And if you want to check out more episodes, you can take a look. And I also appreciate any reviews, ratings, subscribes. But thank you for listening to My Rejection Story. You are listening to My Rejection Story, hosted by Alice Draper.